I'm Emily Mashak, and you're listening to Tuned Into NoCo, Town Square Media's show that lets you know what matters in NoCo. We're talking today with India Blake, the author of a children's book, Gypsy to the Rescue, about how listeners can get involved with National Adopt a Shelter Dog Month. Thank you so much for joining me, but before we get into your book itself, I'd love to just learn a little bit more about you. What inspired you to become a writer?
Well, I come from a creative family, so I've always been encouraged to explore all different kinds of art forms from a young age. And I've always loved to write, whether it's poetry or short stories. And I also actually find a lot of joy in photography, which I used to tell stories visually. And I incorporated those two passions in my first two books.
Yeah, and we're here today to talk about Gypsy to the Rescue. But would you be able to tell me about some of your other works that you have?
Yes, thanks so much for asking. So my first book, Captured, is a collection of poems which is paired with black and white photographs. And for my second book, Before the Curtain Goes Up, I approached that project through a documentary lens by photographing intimate scenes of actors preparing for the stage. I combined those images with the history and background of several community theaters in the parts of the Northeast and actually Key West, Florida.
And now Gypsy to the Rescue, we know it's about a German Shepherd puppy, a children's book. What was the inspiration behind this book? How did it come to be?
My inspiration for the book came from the fact that I love animals and that I felt compelled to share this particular narrative. I actually fostered a dog that I named Gypsy. And after hearing the story of her many failed adoptions from the volunteers at the Florida Keys Animal Shelter, where I had fostered her, it became my purpose to find her a forever home.
Why would you say it's so important to teach younger readers and children about dog rescue in this process?
Oh, I think it's really important to teach children about dog rescue and get them involved at an early age, because there's so many homeless animals out there and that need homes and to get involved in any way that they can to make an impact for animals, whether it's a dog or cat or other creatures that need to find a home.
Right. And one of the issues that I think our listeners are really passionate about is the idea of adopt, don't shop. But I think some listeners may not understand why this is important. They might think that getting a dog from a pet store is kind of the same as getting a dog from the shelter. You know, you're giving a dog a home. But why would you say it's important to adopt a shelter dog before, quote unquote, shopping for a dog?
I think it's important to adopt before shopping for a dog, because there are so many dogs and cats that don't have good homes and are in shelters awaiting the possibility of finding one. As wonderfully helpful as shelters are, the ultimate goal is to find loving homes for all of these animals in great need. And so I think, one could find their perfect match going to a shelter, and you get a dog that, is so thankful for being adopted and coming into your home and being rescued. And there's just really nothing like it.
That's awesome. I know I adopted my cat from a shelter about a year ago, and I know exactly the feeling you're describing.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
And you mentioned now you've been a foster parent to a dog, and you talked a little bit about adopting from a shelter. But could you expand on that? And what are some other ways our listeners can get involved in National Adopt a Shelter Dog Month?
Yeah, absolutely. There are plenty of ways to support local animal shelters in one's area. Yet due to COVID, many volunteer opportunities are still limited. But essential shelter needs still include fostering and transportation or donations as far as food, leashes, and towels or bedding are all extremely helpful for shelters. If you're not ready for fostering or adoption, then transporting is great. It's always welcome since many animals need safe transportation from a shelter to a foster home.
Now, I'm sure many of our listeners hearing this will want to check out your book, Gypsy to the Rescue. Where can they find it?
They can find it on Amazon and barnesandnoble.com.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today, India. Do you have anything else that you would like our listeners to know?
Well, thank you so much for having me on the show, Emily. I appreciate it. Now, I hope that everybody gets involved in this very important month of adoption and maybe find themselves a new companion, bring home, whether it's a cat or dog, but definitely get involved in helping out.
Again, that was India Blake, the author of children's book Gypsy to the Rescue, talking about ways to get involved with National Adopt a Shelter Dog Month. You can find out more about how to get involved yourself on your Town Square Media station apps.